to see his 3 kids here from out of town joining him. So let me introduce them to you. Merle Blair, where are you, Brett? Back here, from down over soon to be relocating to Monroe, Louisiana. And then Dan, where are you? Dan Blair, from Wichita. Angela Garvey from Overland Park. And her daughter, is this Grace or Gretchen?
This is Gretchen.
This is Gretchen, okay?
Grace is on her way.
Okay, they're on their way. And Steve Longback Jr. Tonight you're going to be hearing from 4 other guys who...
This is his other granddaughter.
Oh, I'm sorry. Mackenzie. You want to stand, Mackenzie? Personality plus. Sorry about that. These 4 guys up here have some stories to tell. They're business associates, friends, neighbors, and just old school buddies. And it seems extremely appropriate before we begin. My wife and I left Topeka about 25 years ago, moving to Lawrence. But we've kept our relationships with Merle all these years. And it's interesting, when when the group met last Friday planning today, we talked, well, what are you going to wear? And Jeanette says, Merle will wear a coat and a tie, didn't you? Yeah, you did say that. And of course, Ralph and the president of the university wear bow ties, always. And Gary, I've never seen Gary Clark in a coat and tie. And so when we were dressing tonight, my wife said, Jack, we're going to Topeka. And Topeka dresses up much more than Lawrence does. And it's true. It really is true. So let me introduce our 4 roasters tonight. Jerry Farley, Ralph Raymond, Gary Clark, John Levin. So it seems extremely appropriate to begin with Jerry Farley, president of Washburn University, which meant so much to Merle Blair for all of these years.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Welcome. And what are you here for tonight? We're here for him, aren't we? Okay. I hope you'll keep that in mind by the time everyone finishes tonight, that we came out because we really do love you, Merle, regardless of what's said. Now, Merle has quite a distinguished history here in Topeka. And being a relative newcomer to the town, I didn't know much about that history, but over the last several years I've learned, and I have been impressed. We've had the opportunity to work together on a number of projects. When I came to town, I joined the Chamber of Commerce, and he was the president of the Chamber of Commerce at the time, did a great job in that regard, and was always willing to help Washburn University. He always wanted to do something to give back to the institution that had helped him early in his life. There was one particular event over at our house that I recall that was early on when Susan and I had come to Topeka, and we would have a reception for persons that were visiting Washburn University. And when I really wanted to impress groups that would come in, I would invite the president of the Chamber of Commerce to come over. And I knew that would really put them in awe about what kind of authority I had here in Topeka if I could get him to come. And so one particular event, we had a group of international persons that were visiting Topeka, they were visiting Washburn University, and he comes in, and Merle is his affable self, and meeting everyone, saying hello to everyone, and hello, how are you? My name's Merle Blair, what's your name? And then after that it would be, well, what is it that you do? What's your line of work? Where are you from? Well, he was going around the room working that, and there was one stunning young lady that was there. And she had a daughter with her. And he goes up to her and extends his hand and says, "Hi, I'm Merle Blair. What's your name?" Well, that was a dumb question. She had a little name tag. And it said, she said, well, she told him his name. And then she introduced her daughter. Her daughter was named Viva, and kind of a strange name. You name your daughter after a paper towel, but anyway. Then his next question, it was kind of an awkward moment, and she was being very quiet. And he said, well, where are you from? And she says, well, I'm from Hungary. Well, this was an international gathering, so it seemed right that it'd be people from all around the world. And so he kind of swallowed that down and knew generally where it was in Europe. And then he said, well, what do you do? And then she got, she really kind of hung her head down a little bit and said, well, that's a difficult question. That's kind of an embarrassing question. I really don't know what to say. Then she said, I'm a part of the royal family of Hungary. But we've been exiled from our country. And so here, when we're in the United States, I can't go into a group like this and say, I'm with the royal family and I'm a princess. So that just doesn't work. If you tell people you're a princess, well, that would raise all kinds of questions. And Merle said, oh, yeah, I understand that. And he thought for a moment, and he looked at her very pensively and said, I think I can help you. He said, when people ask you here in Kansas, said, where are you from? You tell them. What do? What you need to do is tell them that you play the harp. Well, that's kind of interesting, if you think about it. He said, well, it'll work out perfectly. He said, first of all, there'll not be a harp around for you to have to demonstrate that you play the harp. So I'm trying to help you here, and there won't be one around. And if there is one around, you can say, well, your fingers are a little tender tonight, and so you can't play the harp. Well, that seemed to satisfy her. She took note of that, and he felt pretty good about himself, and he had helped this foreign person out, and so he went on about his way around the room. Well, several months later, I again was trying to impress a group of scientists that were visiting the campus. Had Merle over the house again, meeting people. Hi, my name is Merle Blair. What's your name? Where are you from? What do you do? And he came up to this one person that had the name tag on, and it had the country from which they came. And it was Hungary. He said, he said, I met a person from Hungary here a couple of months ago. And she said that she was a member of the royal family. And this scientist, he just beamed. He said, oh, really? You met someone from the royal family? Said they are just wonderful. Said they've been in exile, but now they have returned to reclaim the mantle of governance here. And the family's beautiful. And she is said to the princess is so beautiful. She is so nice. And she plays the harp. He's got away with everyone. Now you heard from Bill Curtis that Merle grew up not here in Topeka, but in a small town south here, Independence. And probably some of you don't know that his family was involved in cattle ranching down there, and that when he was young, they were running a cow-calf operation. And they decided they need to have some way to progenerate this cow-calf operation, so they decided to hire a bull. So they bring a bull in to do the job there with all the cows that they had, and the bull just wasn't doing the job. Just wasn't doing it. The cows were all kind of walking around, their heads down, The bull was there, didn't know what to do, and so Merle's father calls the veterinarian. The veterinarian comes out and says, I've got just the thing. And so he gave this bull something. Went away. A couple of days later, Merle was out there with his father, and the neighbor came over, and the bull was out there prancing around, He was doing good, and all the cows had their heads up. They were feeling good. And he said, well, boy, this looks like a real turnaround for you. I said, what happened? He said, well, we had the vet over, and the vet gave the bull something. Look what it did. And so the farmer next door asked him, well, what was it? And before his father could say anything, Merle stood up and said, well, I don't know what it was, but it tasted like peppermint. Story about Merle. It just fits, doesn't it? I just think about it for a moment. I love that. Great job, Merle. Pretty smart guy. Now, he does his program on Sunday, but on Saturday in the house, he and Jeanette have this little ritual. They like to get together, kind of this is a time, quiet time for them. They're just the two of them there in the kitchen, and they like pancakes. I don't know if you knew that or not, but they like to make pancakes. So on Saturday morning, they go down to the kitchen, and they're sitting in the kitchen, and they are going to make pancakes. Well, it's not that they are going to make pancakes, Jeanette's going to make pancakes. And Merle's reading the paper and sitting there watching, and he was in the business. He understands this. He was the head of the Chamber of Commerce. He understands things, but he observed. Jeanette was, she would go over to the refrigerator and get the milk out and set it down. Then she'd go to the pantry and get the pancake mix out. And then she'd go over to the stove and get the griddle out. And then she'd have to go back over and get the syrup out. And it was just all kind of not coordinated very well. I was watching this and reading the newspaper. And he said, well, that's just a little observation, Jeanette. I think I could probably help you. I could give you a few tips on how you can become more efficient at doing this. And you wouldn't have to keep going back and forth and back and forth. And it'll save a lot of time. And he was absolutely right. And that takes him only half the time to make his own pancakes. Now, all of you know that Merle was a student here at Washburn. He was not only a student, he was an athlete here at Washburn. He was involved in all kinds of activities on campus. But as an athlete, back then, just as today, on campuses, not just at Washburn, but all around the country, there are certain courses that have reputations. And if you need to sort of boost your GPA, your grade point, you enroll in one of those courses. And there was, sure enough, one of those courses here on this campus. It was called The Theory of Religion. Quite a popular course. And one reason was because it was one of those courses you were known to be able to boost your GPA. And there was a sequence of events that would occur in this course. It was known that the professor in the course would come in and take roll the first day of classes. First day of class, come and take roll. The professor would only give one examination in the entire semester. Just one. And on that examination, there would be one question, just one. But it was always the same question. Well, word kind of leaked out around campus about this course. And fraternities and sororities, they had things they called test files. Now, I know none of you have ever heard of that before. But files that would have example questions and possible answers that would get you a good grade in this course. And being an athlete, that understanding worked its way through the athletic program. That this would be a good way you can enroll in this course, and it's done this way, and it'll help you with your grade point. So Merle enrolls in that course. Fall term opens. First day of classes, everybody files into this classroom. The professor comes in and takes roll and works out a seating chart. And then the rest of the semester, he never takes roll again. For that first day of class, people are waving at one another. They hadn't seen one another all summer, and they're friendly, and they're anticipating the great class that they're going to have and the superb grade that they will receive from this class. But they don't come back the rest of the semester. End of the semester, they're back in there waving at one another, but they hadn't been in class. They hadn't seen one another for the entire semester. And they bring their little blue books, and they bring their number 2 pencils. And the faculty member comes, they hadn't had any test, one test, this was it. Faculty member comes in, and the question that he's asked for 10 years in that class was trace the travels of St. Paul. Trace the travels of St. Paul. Well, this was a theory of religion course. That's a great question. Great question. Faculty member comes in, and at that time it's the blackboard, goes up to the blackboard, writes out his question. Criticize the Sermon on the Mount. Oh my. Okay, now we had prepared for this by studying those test files, and we were ready for Trace the Travels of St. Paul. Most of the class got up and walked out, laid their blue book on the professor's desk out the front of the class, and he puts a big F on it. And they walk out into the hallway, and they're talking with one another, what in the world happened? Well, there are a few of those persons in certain classes that they try to overdo. And so they were down trying to write a few answers, but they've fallen victim to this as well because they had studied the test file and they were ready to trace the travels of St. Paul. And they would give up and finally write in a couple of pages in a blue book, and they walk up and hand it in and get a C or a D maybe.
And they were out in the hallway, and all suddenly they look back in, and there's Merle sitting in one of those little tablet armchairs, you know, ones you have to kind of squeeze down into, and you have to write. And suddenly, like the proverbial light bulb went off over his head. He bends over that tablet armchair, pulls out his number 2 pencil, opens the blue book, and starts writing. And he wears that pencil to the nub, took out another pencil, opened the second blue book, and continues to write. Finally, he finishes and leans back in the chair, and he kind of stretches out a little bit, you know, and he gets up out of that chair, puts on his leather jacket, and he walks up and he hands those 2 blue books to the professor sitting down there. The professor opens the first one, looks at it ever so briefly, closes it, and very demonstratively put an A on it. And Merle walks out to the hallway. Everybody saw that happen. And the kids are all out there and going, "What happened? Merle, you did the same thing that we did. You studied the test file. Tracy traveled to St. Paul. He comes in and says, criticize the Sermon on the Mount." Said, "What in the world did you write?" Merle looked at him and said, "It was easy." My response was, "Who am I to criticize the Lord? As for me, I'll trace the travels to St. Paul." I mean, what a smart guy he is. Merle, we love you. Thank you.
You guys are going. Thank you.
Our next minister is Gary Clark.
I'm never going on a safari.
Thank you, Jack. You know, before the program started, I mentioned that Jack didn't want much of an introduction. Jack, that was not much of an introduction. Some of you asked about these Band-Aids on my ears. You know, if somebody talks to you for a long time, they say that he's bending your ear. I've been listening to Merle Blair on the radio for 50 years. My ears are bent, broken, tattered, shattered. I'm just kind of keeping together to get through the evening. Besides, if you look close, you'll see that they have animal patterns on them. Zebra stripes, leopard spots, are pretty sexy, really. I am excited about being part of this Merle Blair roast. Actually, the word stewed comes to mind. Forgive us, Julia Child, we are here to roast the half-baked ham. You know, I was excited to come, but I got to thinking that instead of being here right now, I could be down at Dillon's watching them spray the lettuce. All kidding aside, Merle is one of the greatest guys in the world, and that's not my opinion, that is his opinion. The ringtone on his cell phone is not a bell. You wouldn't expect that. You would expect it to be music. The ringtone on Merle Blair's cell phone is applause. Now, I do listen to him every Sunday for 50 years, every minute, 8 to 12. And the question popped into my mind, which probably has popped into your mind as well, and that is, why do we listen? We've heard the same old songs over and over. We've heard the same commercials dozens of times. With all due respect to the sponsors, they're very important. But John Levinson from Lindy Springs. Now, you guys have listened. You know that this is true. He has these interviews with John about this great product. It is a great product. And John, he recorded it. John says, "Come on down, folks. The bridge is now open last week." That bridge has been open for 5 years. I called the city engineering department just to verify that. couldn't believe it myself. And then one of the sponsors is Eric Enns with Canada Drug. Of course, half the time, Merle gets back up and says Canada Dry, or Canadian Drug, or Canadian Geese, whatever. So, Eric Enns used to live in Wichita. And on his commercial, Merle's got this little interview, and he says, Eric, now you just recently moved up from Wichita to Topeka, is that right? I called Canada Drug. I said, how long has Eric Enns been to Topeka with Canada Drug? Merle, it's not 5 years, it's 10 years. 10 years. And he just moved to town. You know, I'm surprised he's still not giving out the 913 area code. Doc Brinkley's told land supplement. So back to the question, why do we listen? Is it a habit? No. Why do we listen? Is it an addiction? No. Why do we listen? Sympathy. Pity. We listen because we feel sorry for them. If we didn't listen, little old MB's empire would just collapse around. Now, if you listen all the time like I do, you know one of his favorite phrases is, I got a million. He plays the song, he says, I got a million. MB's got a million for you folks. Well, I've heard that so many times I thought,